Chapter 14. And I woke with a lost, unhappy feeling that a withdrawing tide had left me on the shore, alone and desolate. My first instinct was for my friend, George Isley, and I noticed a square white envelope with my name upon it in his writing. Before I opened it, I knew quite well what words would be inside. "We are going up to Thebes," the note informed me simply. "We are leaving by the night train. If you care to—" But the last 4 words were scratched out again, though not so thickly that I could not read them. Then came the address of the Egyptologist's house, and the signature very firmly traced. "Yours ever, George Isley." I glanced at my watch and saw that it was after 7 o'clock. The night train left at 6:30. They had already started. The pain of feeling forsaken, left behind, was deep and bitter for myself. But what I felt for him, old friend and comrade, was even more intense, since it was hopeless. Fear and conventional emotion had stopped me at the very gates of an amazing possibility, some state of consciousness that, realizing the past, might doff the present, and, by slipping out of time, experience eternity. That was the seduction I had escaped by the uninspired resistance of my pettier soul. Yet he, my friend, yielding in order to conquer, had obtained an awful prize. I understood the picture's other side as well, with an unutterable poignancy of pity, the prize of immobility, which is sheer stagnation, the imagined bliss, which is a false escape, the dream of finding beauty away from present things. From that dream, the awakening must be rude indeed. Clutching at vanished stars, he had clutched the oldest illusion in the world. To me, it seemed the negation of life that had betrayed him. The pity of it burned me like a flame. But I did not care to follow him and his companion. I waited at Helwan for his return, filling the empty days with yet emptier explanations. I felt as a man who sees what he loves sinking down into clear, deep water, still within visible reach, yet gone beyond recovery. Molson had taken him back to Thebes, and Egypt, monstrous effigy of the past, had caught her prey. The rest, moreover, is easily told. Molson I never saw again. To this day I have never seen him, though his subsequent books are known to me, with the banal fact that he is numbered with those energetic and deluded enthusiasts who start a new religion, obtain notoriety, a few hysterical followers, and oblivion. George Isley, however, returned to Helwan after a fortnight's absence. I saw him, knew him, talked and had my meals with him. We even did slight expeditions together. He was gentle and delightful as a woman who has loved a wonderful ideal and attained to it, in memory. All roughness was gone out of him. He was smooth and polished as a crystal surface that reflects whatever is near enough to ask a picture. Yet his appearance shocked me inexpressibly. There was nothing in him. Nothing. It was the representation of George Isley that came back from Thebes, the outer simulacra, the shell that walks the London streets today. I met no vestige of the man I used to know. George Isley had disappeared. With this marvelous automaton, I lived another month. The horror of him kept me company in the hotel where he moved among the cosmopolitan humanity as a ghost that visits the sunlight yet has its home elsewhere. This empty image of George Isley lived with me in our Helwan hotel until the winds of early March informed his physical frame that discomfort was in the air, and that he might as well move elsewhere happening to be northwards. And he left just as he stayed, automatically. His brain obeyed the conventional stimuli to which his nerves, and consequently his muscles, were accustomed. It sounds so foolish, but he took his ticket automatically. He gave the natural and adequate reasons automatically. He chose his ship and landing place in the same way that ordinary people choose these things. He said goodbye like any other man who leaves casual acquaintances and hopes to meet them again. He lived, that is to say, entirely in his brain. His heart, his emotions, his temperament and personality, that nameless sum total for which the great sympathetic nervous system is accountable, all this, his soul, had gone elsewhere. This once vigorous, gifted being had become a normal, comfortable man that everybody could understand, a commonplace non-entity. He was precisely what the majority expected him to be, ordinary. A good fellow, a man of the world, he was delightful. He merely reflected daily life without partaking of it. To the majority, it was hardly noticeable. Very pleasant was a general verdict. His ambition, his restlessness, his zeal had gone. That tireless zest whose driving power is yearning had taken flight, leaving behind its physical energy without spiritual desire. His soul had found its nest and flown to it. He lived in the chimera of the past, serene, indifferent, detached. I saw him, immense, a shadowy, majestic figure, standing, not moving, in a repose that was satisfying because it could not change. The size, the mystery, the immobility that caged him in seemed to me terrible, for I dared not intrude upon his awful privacy, and intimacy between us there was none. Of his experiences at Thebes I asked no single question. It was somehow not possible or legitimate. He equally vouchsafed no word of explanation. It was uncommunicable to a dweller in the present. Between us was this barrier we both respected. He peered at modern life, incurious, listless, apathetic, through a dim gauze curtain. He was behind it. People round us were going to Saqqara and to the pyramids, to see the Sphinx by moonlight, to dream at Edfu and at Dendera. Others described their journeys to Aswan, Khartoum, and Abu Simbel, and gave details of their encampments in the desert. Wind, wind, wind! The winds of Egypt blew and sang and sighed. From the White Nile came the travelers, and from the Blue Nile, from the Fayum, and from the nameless excavations without end. They talked and wrote their books. They had the magpie knowledge of the present. The Egyptologists, big and little, read the writing on the wall and put the hieroglyphs and papyri into modern language. Alone, George Isley knew the secret. He lived it. And the high passionate calm, the lofty beauty, the glamour and enchantment that are the spell of this thrice-haunted land were in my soul as well, sufficiently for me to interpret his condition. I could not leave, yet having left, I could not stay away. I yearned for the Egypt he knew. No word I uttered, speech, could not approach it. We wandered by the Nile together, and through the groves of palms that once were Memphis. The sandy wastes beyond the pyramids knew our footsteps. The macadam ridges, purple at evening and golden in the dawn, held our passing shadows as we silently went by. At no single dawn or sunset was he to be found indoors, and it became my habit to accompany him. The joy of worship in his soul was marvelous. The great still skies of Egypt watched us, the hanging stars, the gigantic dome of blue. We felt together that burning southern wind. The golden sweetness of the sun lay in our blood as we saw the great boats take the northern breeze upstream. Immensity was everywhere, and this golden magic of the sun. But it was in the desert especially, where only sun and wind observe the faint signaling of time, where space is nothing because it is not divided, and where no detail reminds the heart that the world is called today. It was in the desert this curtain hung most visibly between us, he on that side, I on this. It was transparent. He was with the multitude no man can number, towering to the moon, yet spreading backwards towards his burning source of life, drawn out by the sun and by the crystal air into some vast interior magnitude. The spirit of George Isley hung beside me, close, yet far away, in the haze of olden days. And sometimes he moved. I was aware of gestures. His head was raised to listen. One arm swung shadowy across the sea of broken ridges. From leagues away, a line of sand rose slowly. There was a rustling. Another, an enormous arm, emerged to meet his own, and two stupendous figures drew together. Poised above time, yet throned upon the centuries, they knew eternity. So easily they remained possessors of the land. Facing the east, they waited for the dawn, and their marvelously forgotten singing poured across the world.